Hello everyone and welcome to yet another episode of the STEER series by Dr. Amdekar and team. I am Dr. Rachna Shanbhag Mohite, a pediatric immunologist and rheumatologist from Mumbai, and today I shall be speaking to you about the role of immune function tests. Immune system, as we know, is broadly defined into the innate immune system and the acquired immune system. The innate immune system consists of cells like neutrophils, basophils, eosinophils, macrophages and the complement system, whereas the acquired immunity is mainly made up of the humoral immune system and the cellular immune system. Therefore, the tests that are available to us help us assess the function of each of these arms of the immune system. So, what are the tests that are available to us? We can broadly divide them into quantitative tests and tests that help us assess the function of these cells. Quantitative tests include tests like serum immunoglobulin levels, lymphocyte subset analysis, and looking at the serum C3 and C4 levels to assess the complement system. Whereas when we assess the function of these cells, a great example of this is nitroblue tetrazolium test and DHR assay, which are done to assess the neutrophil function, whereas other tests like antibody response to vaccination, T-cell proliferation studies and certain protein expression studies help us assess the function of these cells. Here I shall be discussing some of the common and commercially available immune function tests, and one of the common tests that one orders is the serum immunoglobulin levels. Serum immunoglobulins, as we know, are proteins produced by the B cells to defend the body against various infections. B cells produce IgG, A, M and E levels, and these are often tested commercially to assess the quantity of immunoglobulins being produced in the body. While sending a serum immunoglobulin levels, one must send a serum sample from an affected individual. In case there is any delay, the sample can even be stored between 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. IgG, A and M are measured using the method of turbidimetry and nephrometry, whereas IgE levels are assessed by ELISA. When we order a test for immunoglobulins, often the indication is a child suffering from recurrent cyanopulmonary infections, especially with encapsulated organisms. This helps us assess for B cell defects or even combined immune deficiency, and a great example for this is a boy suspected with X-linked A-gamma globulinemia. While interpreting this test, certain things must always be kept in mind, such as to look at the age-specific norms which are often provided by the commercial lab. This is because the levels of immunoglobulins vary between infancy to adulthood. For example, a value of IgG less than 3 gram per liter will be very low for an adult but might be in the normal range for an infant. Therefore, one must be extremely cautious while interpreting the values and matching them with the age of the patient. Whenever we ask for this test, there are possibly two outcomes that come out of this. The child might either have a hypergamma globulinemia or a hypogamma globulinemia. Hypergamma globulinemia is often seen in children suffering from infections, autoimmune disorders, inflammatory disorders, or even in PIDs such as chronic granulomatous disease. Whereas hypogamma globulinemia is seen in primary conditions such as SCID, in CVID, X-linked A-gamma globulinemia and even in hyper IgM syndrome. However, before we label a child with primary hypogamma globulinemia, one must be cautious to look for secondary causes of hypogamma globulinemia, which may occur due to protein loss from the gut, from the kidneys, or due to exposure to certain drugs like steroids and carbamazepines. Sometimes the report may also show isolated IgA deficiency, which is defined as serum IgA levels less than -2 standard deviation for the age, and this might be very significant in a child suffering from recurrent cyanopulmonary infections. Elevated IgM levels or hyper IgM can be seen in syndromes such as the hyper IgM syndrome, where the IgM levels are elevated whereas the IgG and IgA levels will be low. Elevated IgE levels, on the other hand, is seen in conditions such as allergies and other immune deficiencies such as Viscott-Aldrich syndrome and STAT3 mutation, or what we know as the Job syndrome. In certain situations, the immunoglobulins might look normal, but the child might have several infections. In such situations, one can even do subclass analysis of IgG levels by looking at the IgG1, G2, G3 and G4 levels, and often these children are diagnosed to have IgG2 deficiency. Immunoglobulin assessment is incomplete without assessing for response to vaccination or for looking for antibodies to naturally occurring antigens such as antibodies to antigens, blood group antigens, or what we call as the isohemagglutinin. One can also perform a pre-vaccination and post-vaccination titer in response to protein vaccines such as diphtheria and tetanus toxoid, or polysaccharide vaccines such as the pneumococcal. After having assessed the immunoglobulin levels, the next test that we often order is the lymphocyte subset analysis, which helps us enumerate the T, B and NK cells. These cells are often recognized by the surface expression of certain proteins through the method of flow cytometry. These protein expression markers include CD3 for T cells, CD19 for B cells and CD15 and 56 for NK cells. By recognizing these surface proteins, the flow cytometry is able to enumerate the number of each of these cells in the body. Whenever one asks for a lymphocyte subset analysis, the lab often provides two types of panels, either a basic panel which includes the T cells, the helper T cells and cytotoxic T cells along with the B cells and NK cells. Certain advanced panels may also include the naive T cells, switched and unswitched memory B cells, which helps us give additional clues to diagnosis of certain PID conditions. While sending a lymphocyte subset analysis, one must often send a EDTA sample from the affected patient, and it can even be stored at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius in case there is a delay in transport. While interpreting a lymphocyte subset analysis, one must always compare the values to age-specific norms. A report showing low CD4 cell might indicate a primary immune deficiency such as MHC class II deficiency or a secondary immune deficiency such as HIV. Whereas, when the test is ordered in an infant with failure to thrive and recurrent infection, one must take a closer look at the T cell compartment. If the T cells are less than 20% or the absolute value is less than 300 in the background of normal to reduced B and NK cells, it might give you a clue to an underlying diagnosis of severe combined immune deficiency. Whereas in a child suspected to have X-linked A gamma globulinemia, if the B cells are less than 2%, that can confirm the diagnosis of XLA in a child having hypogammaglobulinemia and recurrent infections. Next group of tests that help us assess the phagocytic system are the nitroblue tetrazolium test and the dihydrorhodamine assay. Neutrophils, as we know, engulf the organism and kill it by producing reactive oxygen species by the method known as neutrophil respiratory burst, and both these tests help us assess the function of the neutrophils or its ability to kill the organisms. Therefore, they are great screening tests for chronic granulomatous disease. NBT is one of the oldest tests available for screening CGD. It is a microscopy based test, therefore can even be performed at your local laboratory and can give you rapid results. However, there are certain limitations to this test, being inter-observer variability in assessing the test, which can give rise to higher false positive results. Therefore, it is often ordered in combination with a DHR test. DHR is a flow cytometry based analysis. Therefore, it gives us a quantitative assessment of the neutrophil respiratory burst, which helps us calculate the stimulation index or the oxidative index, and any oxidative index or OI less than 30 is considered to be abnormal. There are several advantages to a DHR test, one being that it is less prone to interpretation error. It is the most reliable screening test for CGD and can also help us distinguish between X-linked CGD carrier females by demonstrating two distinct populations of neutrophils. Certain prerequisites that must be kept in mind while ordering these tests are to collect a fresh heparin sample from the index patient along with a healthy age-matched control. These samples must reach the lab immediately and must be analyzed on the same day to avoid falsely low values. The next group of tests are tests for the complement pathway assessment, and this includes quantification of serum C3 and C4 levels and CH50 assay for the classical complement pathway and AH50 assay for the alternate pathway. These tests are often ordered in situations where an individual is suffering from recurrent infections with encapsulated organisms or having recurrent neisseria infections who are suspected to have an underlying complement deficiency. Finally, I'd like to conclude that immune function tests have a great role in screening children who are suspected to have an underlying primary immune deficiency disease. However, having a stepwise approach Starting from taking a good clinical history, arriving at clinical differential diagnosis can guide us in deciding which test needs to be ordered. These tests help us screen individuals, diagnose them, and even monitor these children over a long-term basis. It is important to remember to look at the age-specific norms for tests like immunoglobulin assay and lymphocyte subset analysis. Sending a fresh sample along with an age-matched healthy control is extremely necessary for tests like NBT and DHR. Finally, when all tests are normal but the degree of suspicion is high, in such individuals we may even go ahead and perform a genetic test. Thank you.